Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. On the unexpected death of his father, Keith Rupert Murdoch became the proprietor of the Adelaide News at the age of 22. Today, some 5.5 decades later, Rupert Murdoch owns the controlling interest in the News Corporation, which in turn owns media properties on 5 continents. Properties that include some 170 newspapers, dozens of television stations, half a dozen television networks, a publishing company, and a movie studio. The number of people who every day receive news or entertainment from a property owned by the man seated across the table from me is some 200 million. Rupert Murdoch, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Peter.
We'll talk in a moment about your underlying approach to business, but first, one perfectly straightforward question. When in July 2007, the News Corporation purchased Dow Jones, you paid $5 billion, or $60 a share, which was a premium of about 2/3 over the share price before news of your offer became public. Why was Dow Jones worth $2 billion more to you than it was to the market? Why did you see value that the market didn't see?
Oh, we saw in the Wall Street Journal and in the whole business of financial information, a great central franchise there. And something that we could develop as a national newspaper that would be unique in this country. And that's what we're still working at very hard. And the fact, but the price was, it was a bit of it, it's a bit like us, a bit of it was held in voting shares by a tight family that turned out to be not quite so tight. And to get them to break or to move, $6 was the sort of magic number.
I see.
Per share.
Well, of course, since you purchased, the advertising world has collapsed, and
yes, it was different times.
Of course, it was different.
Today they would have been giving it to you probably.
So, but no regrets about the purchase or the price you paid at the time. All right. Segment 1. On the cusp. Rupert Murdoch, February 2010. I'm quoting you. The News Corporation is on the cusp of a digital dynasty. Content is not just king; it is the emperor. Close quote. Explain yourself.
It's funny because Steve Jobs was in yesterday showing his new iPad, and I went through that with him again. I said, look, you can invent all these things, and they're wonderful and brilliant, but they mean nothing if you haven't got content to put on them. And he agreed completely. You can have iPhones, anything you like. If you can't do all these, someone's got to supply the information.
Okay. So I want to get back to the digital world, the electronic world in a moment, but first let's go to the business to which you've dedicated most of your life, newspapers. 2 sets of figures. September 2007, just over a month after your purchase of the Wall Street Journal. Total paid weekday circulation for the Wall Street Journal, 2,011,882. Total paid weekday circulation for the New York Times, 1,665. October 2009, the figure for the Wall Street Journal is 2,024,000, up about 0.5%. Circulation for the New York Times, 927,000, down more than 7%. And the New York Times wasn't alone. Of the 10 biggest newspapers in the country, over that period, only one, the Wall Street Journal, increased circulation. How did you do that?
I think we just kept improving the quality. We didn't do any special promotions. In fact, we put the price up for subscriptions. But we slowly brought in and widened the paper, made it better, more reliable. I think it has much greater judgment now and coverage of foreign news. We have wonderful correspondents. We've improved our Washington coverage greatly. We've got a long way to go in a lot of areas yet. But we want to widen this audience and specialize in some other areas too, such as health and so on.
And that doesn't place at risk the franchise of the business information, the business audience. You believe you can retain that audience while broadening it to make it a truly national newspaper.
Absolutely. It's called the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
But for 50 years, they've been saying it's the Main Street Journal. It is for the small business owner or businessman or person involved in business anyway, all across the country. It's not just for Wall Street bankers.
David Carr, writing in the New York Times, Carr says that Robert Thompson, the managing editor of the Wall Street Journal, and Gerard Baker, the deputy managing editor, quote, The two men have had a big impact on the paper's Washington coverage, adopting a more conservative tone and editing and headlining articles to reflect chronic skepticism of the current administration, close quote. Fair?
I don't think it's become conservative. Maybe a little more balanced. If you read into every story, very carefully, it certainly hasn't become conservative. Were there in the past a few correspondents there who had a bit of a left-wing tinge in the way they covered stories? Yes, probably.
According to the Gallup organization, 20% of Americans call themselves liberals. 40% call themselves conservative. I think we can accept, given the various polls that have been done through the years, the various newsroom surveys, that overwhelmingly newspapers in this country are dominated by editors and reporters who are liberal. Why shouldn't the Wall Street Journal be quite straightforward about saying we intend to be a newspaper for the rest of Americans, and incidentally, that market is twice as large? Or is there a danger in being explicit about it? How do you think that through?
We want to be objective as one can be, and as fair as one can be, and we think the rest of the press is monolithically, very often, unfair. But you forgot to mention the 40% of America who call themselves independents.
Yes.
Now, they're people who don't like either party. They're not about to join the Republican Party or the Democratic Party. This country is, I say, vaguely center-right in mood. And if you look at me and a few people, you might say we're a little bit more right than that. But the paper, I don't think there's no question that the editorial right of the opinion pages at the back of the paper, at the front section, are consistently take a pretty conservative attitude. They never endorse candidates, right, but they look very skeptically at big government and what's going on in Washington.